Hi, Jeff here from the Big Gay Fiction Podcast. I talked with debut author Michael Vance Gurley for episode 42, and we talked far longer than we could fit into the single episode. So, here's the rest of our interview where we talked about plotting versus pantsing, the pitchapoolza he participated in for the long season, his editing process, some advice for first-time authors, and of course we talked some hockey too. So, here's the rest of that interview, and if you missed the first part in the main episode of 42, go back and check that out.
For this book, did you had all this research and all these story points. Did you ultimately plot it out, or did you kind of pants the writing? Which way did it go?
I like the term "pants the writing." This is my first novel. I've never written really anything beyond the length of a comic book, which I've written a few of those. And I decided I'm going to look on the internet for how to write a book. How do you go about it? Because I have this idea in my head. I wrote the whole story out in terms of ultimately where we were going to end up. And in sidebar, my characters changed my ending on me. They wouldn't do in the end what I had originally thought of 8 months beforehand. So that was kind of an interesting thing. I had to change my ending, and hopefully it's better than it would have been. I think it is. But I found like the snowflake method, and where you build a little bit, one sentence, and then you build two sentences, and then a paragraph about your book. And then the same thing about each character, one sentence, two sentences, a paragraph, two paragraphs, and then the next person, until I started to have about 20, 30 pages of outline. And I outlined the entire book for this one. So it was, it ended up being 30 pages of outline because I wrote full paragraphs. And then I found myself almost writing a full chapter in the outline, and I said, I think it's time to reformat my outline. And I loved it. It was great because you could surprise yourself. You could do different things. You could change your mind. But in general, writer's block is helped, I think, when you have an outline. Mm-hmm. You know where you're going, and you know the major beats you want. And then you're surprised by things. But in general, you can do that. The downside is you've already written it, and it would kill you to change too much. And sometimes it makes it feel like a chore instead of just discovery. The new thing I'm working on is, it wasn't outlined until I pitched it to a publisher. I wrote half this book, and I'm currently writing it, and it is seat of the pants. It was like, what would the characters do next? And I'm always thinking about it. It's more challenging. It's more stressful to write that way for me, but it also is fun. So I'm trying both. I like to do different things.
That's cool. That's cool. How long did Long Season take?
About 2 months to write it in my head, and I don't know, maybe I'll say a year where the idea was in my head a little bit, 2 months of really fleshing it out in my head, and then 6 months of feverish writing. And I promised myself I was going to finish the book before my birthday, and I said before I turn 40, I will have a full-length novel written. And I finished it 3 weeks before my 40th birthday.
Congratulations!
And, yeah, thank you. So that was 6 months,
So tell me about Pitchapoolza, because I don't know about this, and how that helped shape the book into what it is now.
Yeah, Pitchapoolza is an event held, I don't know how often, probably every 6 months, maybe or so, by Ariel Eckstadt and David Henry Sterry, and he's an author, and she is an agent working with a agency, and they're married, and they're really nice people, and they have a company called The Book Doctors, and their mission is to help people navigate self-publishing, finding an agent, or going with a publisher. So they host these events called Pitchapoolza, and David says it's like American Idol for books. And they come to a bookstore or something, and they sell their how to get published book, and people in the audience can randomly get a number assigned, and if you're lucky enough to get called, out of like 150 people in the audience, they pick about 25, you get to pitch your book, and you get 60 seconds, and they said, we will cut you off at 60 seconds, so make sure it counts. And if you win, you get their help, their mentorship, pretty unlimited mentorship from them. and then they will introduce you to an agent or a publisher. And I thought, wow, this is Anderson's Bookshop right around the corner from my house. I need to do this. So, of course, being the research guy that I am, I didn't just waltz in there and wing it. I practiced it and punished my friends by making them listen to my 60 seconds over and over and over, and made a sell sheet and had it all on the iPad and ready to go. And I went in there and I was lucky enough to win it. It was really exciting. There were a lot of great pitches that day, and I won. And actually afterwards talked to them for a long time and made friends with one of the other guest judges, Andrea Beatty, who really helped me out afterwards as well. So I kind of gained 3 mentors by winning this contest. And in publishing, that's a huge push, push forward. When you get people who can navigate, they know the pitfalls, they know how to treat people and all that, and they can bestow that to you. It was really helpful. And then eventually the book doctors hooked me up with Bold Strokes Books and an editor, and it just made my book tons better than it originally was, I hope, anyway. And Bold Strokes, it was great. They had that connection with them, and all that did was kind of put me in the front of the line, and they still had to evaluate me. And they said, it could take, as you know, in publishers, we can get back to you in 3 months to 6 months. And I was like, but that's standard in publishing. And about 2 weeks later, I got a contract in the email.
Nice.
I was, oh, wow, it's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, so they helped a lot.
How was the editing process for you? Because there's always, you always hear like, I don't want to hurt my baby. And the flip side, it's like, it always makes it better. There's the people who embrace the editing and people who are like nervous about the editing and don't want to hear about the editing.
The book doctors researched and they helped me find editor in LGBT field, somebody that I wouldn't have to overcome any hurdles with, So they found Jerry Wheeler, who is it sounds like he's pretty famous in the editing world. He works with Wild City and Bold Strokes Books and Lathe Press, among others. And he's just a great guy out in Colorado. Anyway, he looked at my stuff and he reworked my 20 pages for a lot of pitches to agents and publishers. And after the first, I think he edited the first 10 pages for free to show me what he would do, I think. And I got him back and I was like, wow, it is so much better than it was. And maybe I'm not as good a writer as I thought, because when you look at all the red marks all over it, basically like, wow, my Microsoft track changes. Yeah. But I really loved that process. He became, or maybe he was, I don't know, but he became an expert in anachronisms of the 20s, and he would call out all my, inappropriate usage of time slang and to sharpen me up and really challenge me. And each process delved just a little bit further into what could be better. Your general, each pass takes a little bit of the crud away from your book. And then in the last one, I think we took out 500 instances of the word that. And I couldn't believe that I used the word that so many times. But anyway, I think it's a lot better. And actually, when I got hooked up with Bold Strokes Books, they hired Jerry Wheeler to be my professional editor through them. So it was nice to connect that and not have to work with a different set of people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, any advice for first-time authors to kind of pivot us back to the writing stuff a little bit?
Advice, it feels a little disingenuous to give advice to people when I only have one book out and I don't even have sales info yet, so I don't even know how well it's doing beyond the opening. However, I'm happy and free to give advice to people because having it out, I now realize that even with 3 really great mentors and a publishing house that's been very supportive of me, Bold Strokes Books has been very professional and nice, and they've been amazing with like cover design. You know, my cover, the cover, I got to choose. You know, the all that, and they were really supportive of that. But I have learned some things through this about marketing that I was sort of told, but not in specifics enough, maybe. But now I know when to start marketing a little earlier, because I feel like the book's been out a month now. There's almost like this feel out there in return to me of it's too late to ask for a review. It's too late to do these things. It's already been out a month. It's old. Which is, you know, crazy, but there's so many books coming out. Yeah. It is old. I would have started earlier. That would be my advice. And my other advice is be polite. Be polite to everyone, even if they say no. I got great feedback from agents who said no, publishing houses who said no, that kind of thing. And details in a contract, you're like, I want to change this. You can do all those things, but you have to be polite about it, because who you see, what you don't see is that they know everybody else you're talking to. Or at least you don't want a bad reputation out there of being like a prima donna or a jerk. So I was polite to everybody. And I kind of think, I like to think I am anyway. But in that field, you get frustrated. I had a few agents kind of lead me along and make it seem like they were going to do something, and then it kind of piddled out and didn't happen. And I was just polite back. I was very, very frustrated about the process and get your hopes up and get crushed. But you learn something from that, and you're polite and you move on, because there's no reason and there's no benefit to you or anybody for being rude to people. And the other advice, like I said, my book didn't really have a major audience when I was writing it, and I could have sexed it up more to make it more romance category than it is. I could have, done a whole lot of other. I could have put aliens in it. I could have done all kinds of stuff, But I wrote the book that was in my heart, and if I only find 500 readers that are passionate about it, then I'm happy with that. If I find 1 million readers that love it, that's way better. But because writing is it's a job a little bit, and it can be expensive with editing and the time you put into it and all that. But really, having reviews like the one you did on your site is that's what it's all about. Reaching somebody. If you do something that one kid that's struggling picks up and can relate to, and think I can keep going, that's what it's about, really. Mm-hmm. I kind of wrote to 13-year-old Michael a little bit,
Nice.
Not to get too deep, sorry.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, if you try to write a book, if somebody told you to put aliens in that book, you might, okay, fine, I'll do it. But then it would come, the reader would know you shoehorned that in somehow. It wasn't the book you meant to write.
Yeah. Somebody actually did jokingly ask me to put aliens in it, and that's never left my head. There were other crazy ideas too, but I love supernatural stuff, and I wasn't writing a supernatural book, but there is a chapter in Halloween where they go to a seance, and I got some advice to take it out, and those are people who know anything about the 20s and research back then, like Harry Houdini, greatest escape artist of all time, was a huge investigator of the paranormal, and he would go to hundreds of seances and magic things and debunk them and find ways to prove them as charlatans, because in the 20s, people were like gaga over the paranormal. So it had to find a place in my book for me, and I hopefully that scene worked.
I enjoyed it because it didn't feel out of place at all.
Good.
Yeah,
thanks.
Halloween. Sure. Yeah. So we got to talk a little hockey. Before we wrap up, of course. So obviously, favorite team is the Blackhawks. Do you have others that you follow?
I've always liked the Red Wings, and I think that
I knew I liked you for a reason.
I don't know. I look over my shoulder because I'm in Chicago. Chicago Blackhawks are my team. I love the Chicago Blackhawks. It's kind of those things as, do you love them because you're in that city? Well, you can't really answer that. But I've always liked and respected the Detroit Red Wings. I loved the Sergei Fedorov years. Oh, man, him and Nicholas Lindstrom and Stevie Y, Steve Yzerman. I mean, talk about amazing elite level players. And I met Dominic Hasek once, and real nice guy. So I loved that whole era of the Red Wings, and with Scotty Bowman, they had this like, I don't know, this dynasty, right? So you got to respect that. I've always liked Colorado Avalanche back in the Patrick Waugh, Joe Sakic, Adam Foote, those days. I loved way back then Milan Hajduk, and that was like a dream. Sandis Ozelinch. Back then, that was like an unbeatable dream team, and they won a couple of cups. They were amazing. So I love those teams. There's some players, that I'm more of a fan of finesse and scoring and goalies than I am of bruisers and the big defensemen who are bruisers and battlers and fighters, and your Bob Proberts and Ty Domi, and I just never got into that. If I want to see boxing, I'll watch boxing. I like hockey. I know that that's part of the game, but I'm not big into the fighting part of it. And on the reverse side, who I've never really liked much? I'm going to say it. Wayne Gretzky. I just never got into it. He's the most amazing player that's apparently ever lived, but I don't know. I don't know. Never got into him.
I don't know. I was into that. And I really I appreciated the time he was in New York a lot. It's the only time I could deal with the Rangers, really, and be able to be a fan of the Rangers.
With Gretzky, it felt like, there's no doubt that he's going to be amazing. When Mark Messier wins the Stanley Cup, and that's one of the most iconic videos in the history of the NHL. When he wins the cup as captain and he goes to pick it up and he's shaking and screaming and crying, that's what hockey's about.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right about that. I couldn't begrudge them that win either because it was such an emotional thing. And I'm a huge Red Wings fan, but I have big respect for the Blackhawks. I'm a goalie guy, too. I especially like Corey Crawford. I think he's pretty amazing. And for all of my not fandom, if you will, for the Rangers, I think I'm blanking on his name right now. The Rangers goalie. I love watching him.
Is it Lundqvist?
Lundqvist, thank you. Total blank out.
Lundqvist, yeah.
I mean, I sat in the Garden one of the times that the Red Wings were in town and watched the Red Wings fall apart. But loved watching him play goal because he was awesome in that game and he deserved to win it. Yeah.
We've had. I'm a huge goalie fan, and I love, like Patrick Waugh helped revolutionize goalie. And he with that, goalies are such interesting people in general. So I try to make a lot of those quirks into Jean Paul. The bit where Jean Paul can't step on the lines, the painted lines. That's Patrick Waugh. He can't step on the lines. He always has to kind of little hop over them. And of course, back then, the 20s, they didn't wear masks. But, Patrick Waugh, they always had these weird chicken movements with his mask that just were hilarious to me. And then he was so amazing. And a brawler as well. Like, he was this weird mix. So I was a huge Patrick Waugh fan.
Yeah, and it's weird to see a goalie who's a brawler.
Yeah, like... I think he might be kind of a violent guy. I'm not sure, but but back then, I mean, him coming across the ice to fight with who's the famous one? Was it Hasek, or he just beat the pulp out of Mike Vernon or somebody? And I was like, I'm not big into the fighting, but goalies fighting in the middle was kind of crazy. Something bad had to happen when the goalies fight,
right? Because they're so far apart from each other, they can't even smack talk each other.
No, right. They can't even hear each other from over there. But I love I love the goalies like Hasek or Curtis Joseph, who would flop on the ice and flip their legs around and use reflexes. And Eddie Belfour, oh man, Eddie Belfour, that's a guy that you don't cross.
Yeah,
Eddie Belfour,
absolutely.
him and Chris Chelios, they would, you know. I watched a game where Chelios bear hugged an opposing player so that Eddie Belfour could punch him in the face. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. You're a goalie. They're supposed to be controlled, you know.
So I know you've had the opportunity to kiss the Stanley Cup, which is pretty awesome. I've only been in the same room with it. I didn't get to get near it, so I'm a little jealous. What's the story there?
Well, in 2010, when the Chicago Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup, which was huge. I mean, it was such a huge thing. Hadn't won the Stanley Cup in 49 years. The time before was in the 90s. We were in the in the finals and got swept, which was really, whatever. Still stings, right? But so 2010, we won the Stanley Cup. Brent Sopel, defenseman, said he was going with the Stanley Cup to the Chicago Pride Parade in June, and it was the first time in history that the Cup was going to make an appearance at the Pride Parade, as far as I can recall, and let alone an actual active NHL player was going to be at the Pride Parade, which was huge. So had to go, and then I started following him on Twitter, and I don't twit much, but I followed him, and he said, hey, I'm going to be at the Pride Parade tomorrow, and afterwards meet me at a local Wrigleyville restaurant bar where I'll be bringing the Stanley Cup, and we can come party with the Stanley Cup, which is a huge thing. And it's only a couple blocks from the parade. So I said, we're doing it. So I went to the parade. As soon as he passed, I turned around and ran to the restaurant with some people, and eventually it got so crowded in there. I showed up early enough, but it got so crowded they like locked the door. You couldn't, and no more people in. And then cops started showing up, and firemen checking the fire code. And I made friends with the bartenders and the waiters and waitresses, and ended up helping them. Somehow I connived my way into helping carry a table that they were going to put the Stanley Cup on. The people who were managing the cup thought I worked there and asked me like what we needed to do, which was really cool. And they said, where's the front of the line? And I said, right here. They said, oh, okay. So I ended up at the line. And when the cup came in, it was amazing and everybody was touching it. It has this no other trophy has raised that much charity money. No other trophy gathers a crowd just to see the trophy. Other trophies are important. Don't get me wrong. I don't know any of their names, and neither does anybody else. But the Stanley Cup, it draws crowds, and it was packed. Anyway, so I got up there first. I went up, I kissed the cup, and I took like 30 pictures of it, and then pictures of me standing with the cup. And then I went to kiss it again to get some more pictures, and I noticed my own chapstick ring on the Stanley Cup that I had left, and I was like, oh, I am so thankful I was first.
Yeah.
And then I grabbed the top of it, and I was reaching down to grab the bottom, and I was quickly told, nope, you cannot raise the Stanley Cup unless you're part of the team, because I was going for it.
Hey, at least you went for it, right?
And they said no, so I respected that. And it was an amazing thing. I haven't chased it again. I've done it. I know Blackhawks have won 2 more times. We're going to win a couple more times, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe next year. It's a great team. So I'm not going to chase it anymore. I had my thing, but if it's around, I would. I'd love to lift it up.
I mean, I think it ties back a little bit to the exactly what we were talking about not just contemporary fiction, but like the world we live in. Because You Can Play was around 2 years, maybe at least 1, maybe 2 before Sam came out. I was getting ready to draft into to try and draft into the NFL.
Yeah.
And it still failed for him. And I think I've read, in some places now where he looks back and was like, maybe I shouldn't have done that right then. Yeah. And I think the NHL says they're ready. And You Can Play is out there, and all those hockey teams, and now it's beyond hockey, the support that gets. but people are still scared.
Yeah.
To do it in the same way that Brett and Jean-Paul were a little scared, in the same way that Simon and Alex were a little scared in the beginning to come out to the team. Same thing you see in Serena's books and some of the other books.
Yeah.
Someday.
I think like Jason Collins in the NBA, not to say that it was safe for him to do so, but here's a guy who is a journeyman. He's been on a lot of teams, and he's at the end of his career, and he knows it. So for him to come out, it's a little bit safer. It's still brave.
Yeah.
But it's a little safer. Like, I can't remember, I want to say Don Amici, but I know that's not his name. Basketball player that came out after he retired. That
might have been his name. I know who you're talking about, though.
It might have been. It sounds like a famous actor, but anyway, it's brave enough to come out and to try to lead the way post. But yeah, Michael Sam coming out at the beginning, when you're the defensive conference champ and you get drafted way down the line and then you don't make it and you're in a practice squad and you're out, I don't know if that was talent related. I worry about that.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
They tried anyway, and I think that's huge. And maybe it'll happen.
Hopefully.
It will.
Hopefully, especially because you've got so much college athletes coming out now.
Yes.
That they'll rise to that next level and already be out by the time they get there, maybe.
Yeah. Like Robbie Rogers, right? The soccer player?
Yeah.
He came out and then he's on LA Galaxy or something. But he's huge.
You could tell both of us only follow hockey, really.
You can, right?
It's like these other sports may have these people in them.
True. Anyway, it's changing.
Thank you for listening to Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. New episodes are available every Monday at iTunes and other major podcast outlets. While there, subscribe to the show and please consider leaving a review. For detailed show notes, links, and to sign up for the monthly newsletter, visit biggayfictionpodcast.com.